Hi, welcome everyone to our Fashion Means Business Fashion Talk. Today we are joined by Eshita Kabra. Thank you very much for joining us today. So Eshita is the founder and CEO of the award-winning social fashion rental app By Rotation. And Eshita founded By Rotation as kind of a bit of a side hustle back in April 2019. And it's been referred to as sort of the Airbnb of fashion. Well, that's what I read in Sky News, with the aim of the app being to encourage consumers to invest in quality pieces and share them rather than consume large quantities of fast fashion. Eshita, I think I read in one of your interviews or heard that it's very much about being able to access quality designer pieces for a fraction of the retail price. Thank you very much for giving up your time today. I know you're very, very busy. Originally an investment professional with 7 years of experience, who then went on to combine your experience with your passion for fashion and graphic design. You're also a Forbes 30 under 30 technology and board member of the sharing economy. And you recently were honored as the one of the 10 Marie Claire Future Shapers 2021. So congratulations. So thank you very much for joining us today. You are actually joining us from the shop floor, so there may be a little bit of background noise. But really, this is an opportunity for you to sort of share your journey, give some information to all of us attending today about By Rotation, and get us to understand a little bit more about how the platform works and you know how you actually got to where you are today. Got lots of eager students who are keen to know the secret to your success, and I'm sure you're going to be very inspirational you share with us today. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Hannah. Thank you for having me, and thank you LCF for having me and everyone who's joined the call so far. And I love to meet eager students. I think I was one of them as well. I was always sort of the the one who would always go to the teacher, to the professor, and be like, how can I get it first? How can I get it first in the module? Tell me. So that was definitely me. So congrats to you guys for joining this call. Thank you. So yeah, a little bit about myself. So my name is Eshita. I am the founder, CEO, also the head of product for By Rotation. By Rotation is the world's first social network where you can lend and rent designer fashion with each other, thereby saving the planet one rented outfit at a time, saving money, making money because you can lend your own wardrobe, and looking great because you can still wear new clothes, and also creating friendships and bonds. So there's plenty of reasons why you should be on the app. So if you aren't already, please do download the free app. And I guess the reason why I founded By Rotation was from a personal need. It was a very first world problem. I was planning my honeymoon, so holiday, and I wanted to wear new clothes, nice, elaborate clothing, sometimes designer clothing, for this trip of a lifetime. And I thought it would be so nice if I could borrow the clothes that these women on Instagram that you'd see, all these very, very well-dressed women who never wear the same outfit ever again, that hashtag OOTD outfit of the day. I thought it'd be so nice if I could borrow her clothes. And so I started thinking about fashion rental and how in the UK and even in Europe for that matter, there's not really a big fashion rental solution. There's a few stores on the high street, like in a village or in like London, where you can maybe rent a tux or you can rent hats for a wedding, but nowhere where I can rent nice, just really nice, kind of clothes for my holiday as opposed to going to a ball or whatever. And so I started thinking about the landscape, the global landscape, and how there was definitely this big gap in the market in the UK and Europe. But I also noticed that all the incumbents, so things like Rent the Runway, which just filed for IPO a month ago, Y Closet in China, Style Theory in Singapore, where I grew up and where I'm from, all of them had one thing in common, which was they were very inventory heavy. So logistics businesses really, or a warehouse full of clothes with lots of shipping, dry cleaning, and managing stock. And this wasn't really something that I saw a lot of interest in. I didn't feel like it was what was my forte either. I wouldn't be able to add any value in that. My background, as Hannah mentioned, is that I used to be an investment analyst, investing in corporate bonds. Again, very unrelated to what I'm doing now, but still a bit more related than running a warehouse full of clothes. And one of the things I noticed when I trialed Rent the Runway, because my sister lives in New York and she used to be one of those subscribers of Rent the Runway, I noticed on a couple of work trips that all the items on the platform of Rent the Runway were often all season items. So they might be brands that you find desirable, but they would be the polyester version of a silk dress, or colors that are outdated or no one would want to wear anyway. And so I thought, nothing's really that desirable. It seems to be all about brand names and convenience and accessibility, because it's cheaper than buying things outright. So it didn't really, it didn't leave me inspired. I didn't feel very loyal to the brand. It just seemed like something I could have out of convenience, but I would give it up the moment I didn't need it, which is the COVID pandemic, when we were all having lockdowns. So that's when I thought about how I would actually just really like to borrow this woman on Instagram. I would just like to pay her and borrow her clothes and become maybe even her acquaintance. And it wasn't until my honeymoon, so 3 months later, which is back to Rajasthan in India, where I was born, where I noticed a visible amount of textile waste, even in my suburban hometown. So, this goes beyond the landfills outside Delhi, Bombay, Gurgaon that we see in all these Guardian articles. This is actually where my relatives still live and where I was born. And the part of India that I'm from, it's very well known for textiles, probably why I love fashion maybe. And I couldn't help but reflect on how I know that the fashion industry is very, elitist, exclusive, and pretty racist, to be honest. And now it seemed like the adverse effects of this industry were falling on my country yet again and my people. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to come up with a sharing economy type model and build a community where me and this woman, we could actually exchange or rotate clothes with each other, and thereby, for all the pragmatic reasons which I mentioned, save money, make money, save the planet one outfit at a time, become friendly with someone and still look great. That's when I decided that's how it needs to be. It needs to be a community-focused approach, with the backbone being technology. So the way that we would really describe ourselves first and foremost is that we are a tech company. That's the reason why we are in the Forbes list for European technology, not so much retail or fashion. My background per se is not in fashion or retail either. I'm not, I haven't studied fashion at all. I was a web designer since the age of 11, which is where I probably have an affinity for product. And I'm very involved in what you see on our platform. So that's the app, although our web-based platform is coming out later this month. We're in December. And I think for me, it kind of feels like full circle, because when I was in high school, I thought that I wanted to work in marketing and advertising because I used to be a pretty prolific graphic designer. And then I realized very quickly when I studied abroad, so in the UK for university, that I needed an international student visa to work in the country. So I noticed that I realized that I probably had to work for a big company, become a sellout, and I actually really enjoyed a placement year in the investment management industry. But somehow we're still full circle. I'm back to working in something creative, although there is a big analytical side to it. And I would really, really attribute this inclination towards being analytical and data oriented to my career in the city. So a lot of what you see on Buy Rotation, you'll see, obviously it's glamorous, it's beautiful. We're in a beautiful pop-up store, which you guys should definitely visit if you have any plans to be in London. It's 98 Marylebone Lane, and it's a very, very different concept to any other store you'll see around. It's a space for our community to hang out. So if you can see, we've got some rails, but the focus is really more on just hanging out, spending some time with us, doing workshops. We had a flower crown workshop here yesterday. And it's just really nice to bring the community together, because I think that's something that no one can sort of replicate, for that matter. Anyone can build an app, anyone can buy lots of clothes, manage them, have a nice curation of items that you can rent. What you can't replicate is the relationships that we've built amongst people. So this is why, you know, we've done things, I would say, very differently to any other fashion rental incumbent. And I would say another thing about that is that our focus is really on the sharing economy. So for us, it's more about sharing what you already have. It's less about the fashion side of it. Of course, you know, we're renting clothes, beautiful clothes, you know, you see nice clothes here, but it's really the other conversations that happen within our community. You know, they go beyond fashion altogether. And sorry, I think I was trying to say something about the data and analytics, and then I kind of start showing you the store, which got me really excited as well. But on the data and analytics front, I mean, it's incredible from the sort of social network position that we have of our platform, the kind of information that we're seeing about how people are consuming fashion, you know, which brands are doing really well, which product category, which color. You know, I know what's the top performing rented color on our app. And I think these are the things that are making consumers, average consumers, just regular people on the street, on Oxford Street, you know, making them think really about, do I really need to buy something? Can I just rent it? And if I am going to buy it, is someone else going to wear it for me? Can I share it? Can I wear it more than 30 times? So the rentability of it. So yeah, I think we've ended up with much more conscious consumers than when they first downloaded the app and started using it. So I think that's something that keeps me going, you know, because it's not a very glamorous job as much as it looks like, as much as you see on the photo shoots and the press articles. There's a lot of grit that goes behind it. I'm the intern, so I also do random things like, you know, running to the post office or doing customer service tickets, and all the way to obviously things like fundraising and strategy. But yeah, it's a bit of everything, and I think we have to be honest about that as founders. That it's not just what you see, you know, the highlight reel that you see on LinkedIn and Instagram. There's more to it. But yeah, that's a bit of the story.
Brilliant. Okay, well, thank you very much for sharing that. And as you pointed out, you know, you really started this as a bit of a side hustle, so to speak, back in 2019. And you've just referred to yourself as an intern, but I do know that, you know, there are a number of you working within the business. Perhaps for the benefit of our business students, you could perhaps explain, you know, how was the process of setting up By Rotation, in the sense that, you know, obviously started with your idea, but, you know, were you a one-man band right from the start, or, you know, sort of at what stage did you start expanding? And obviously you've got the pop-up now. So could you give us a little bit of insight into sort of the journey of By Rotation behind the scenes?
Yeah, so for 6 months, so that was April 2019, we were incorporated officially. I think when I came back from my honeymoon in March, I went to New York right away for a work trip, and then again experimented with Rent the Runway. And I think it was in late March that I told my friends I was gonna found this thing, and I don't know the name. I didn't have a name back then. Invited them to my 1-bedroom apartment to, you know, trial with, you know, looking at my clothes and tell me would they actually rent any of these. And some of my friends brought their pieces as well. So we started like having very organic grassroots conversations about it. And then once that seemed right, I incorporated the company. So that was in April 2019. The first 6 months, I was working full time. I was using my salary to pay a couple of freelancers who are still working with us today. Marita's just opposite me. And I have my founding team, which is my CTO, who's been with us since July 2019, and I only left my job in October 2019. So actually a bunch of the people in our team have been with us even longer than I have officially. And yeah, and I think if you're going to found any sort of like tech company, if there's any tech involved, I think it's very important to have a CTO, especially if you're, you know, positioning yourself as a tech company. And we're actually the only fashion rental player, I would say, in the UK and even Europe that has an in-house tech team and a CTO. So our focus is very much on tech, data, and analytics. The rest is all, you know, it's all to build community, and it looks it looks fashiony, it looks glamour, you know, very glamorous, but really there's a lot of hard stuff that's happening in the background, essentially. So I would say that was the founding team. And as I mentioned, a lot of them are still with us, but now we have a 4-person full-time tech team and a 5-person marketing and operations team, which is myself included. And yeah, I mean, I wear a lot of hats, and we're quite lean, I would say, considering how far we've come in a short amount of time. But I think I think when you're joining an early stage startup, especially if you're, growing at the pace that we are, you have to be quite careful who is the next person to join the team, because it does affect, I don't want to say company, because we're still a startup. It does affect the family culture altogether, because we are very much a family. We have like a few groups on WhatsApp where we're messaging each other throughout the night, on the weekends. There's a very different level of commitment to working for a well-established employer, or even in the corporate world, which is crazy, because my team is, they're not the founders of By Rotation, but they feel everything so personally. They're so involved emotionally, physically, mentally. And I think that's, that kind of commitment is not for everyone who wants to work, who wants to work for someone else. And I totally appreciate that. But that's something I'd probably tell, to you guys who are studying and graduating, that working for a startup is not really that fun as it looks. There's a lot of hard work, and it's not for everyone. And I think one more thing worth mentioning, which I find so important in building our culture, and it's worked out really well for us, is I always think about the person who's joining the team. Are they thinking about what's in it for me, and just what's in it for me? So what can I get from By Rotation, as opposed to what can I give to By Rotation? And I think it's very obvious. You can tell when someone's more in it for themselves rather than they're in it for By Rotation. That's fine at a larger company, where every incremental person doesn't make such a big change, but it does matter in a 9-person team. So we're very careful about that, and I like to think I have a pretty good gut feeling, which is why we hire well and we keep people well, and that's how we've built the kind of community that we have. It's very, very like slow and considerate.
Yeah. So growing quite organically, even though you're growing quite fast.
Yeah. I think like one of the things, for example, I always ask people who, are there jobs available at By Rotation? Our first question is always like, yeah, depends what's your username on the app? I mean, it's so important for us. We're at a stage where we do believe that if you do want to work here, you should have already heard of it, and you should have at least tried to experiment with it, because it's a free app. It's not like you have to buy it or pay for it. So that kind of curiosity for By Rotation, and those sort of ideas that you already have for us, like you're already cheerleading us from the side, even from the sidelines, even though you haven't joined the team yet. I think that's super important to me, and I'm sure I'll be different about this 2 years down the road, but I think where we are at the moment, everyone in the team is a huge fan of By Rotation. They use it without even telling me. I'll be like, oh, you rented a dress for your friend's birthday. You didn't say. I said, oh, sorry, do I need to tell you? No, they don't need to.
Oh, and actually your advice, I can't remember where I read this, but was that, you recommended working for someone else before wanting to actually become an entrepreneur or founder. I imagine that, that advice was based on, actually it's a good learning curve from perhaps learning from others before you actually sort of start something yourself. And, the pressure increases because actually it's your business rather than someone else's business. But could you perhaps give any other sort of advice to anyone who might be thinking to set up their own business?
Yeah, I think the reason why I said that about working for someone else is it's every mistake that you make at your own startup or your own business, it's going to hurt you so much more. It's going to be very expensive. So it's better to make those mistakes, at other people's costs, basically. That's the reality of it. Just very practical feedback on there. But I would say any other feedback, I think also when you work for someone else, I think there's this level of humility that you will gain, which you won't as a first-time founder, because you don't know what's right and what's wrong. And I don't know. I feel when I worked for someone else, which I did for the first 6.5, 7 years of my career, I think I learned to deal with the most difficult and uncomfortable situations. That I became much more comfortable, and I would say even ended up with a higher self-esteem that I probably wouldn't have on my own. I think it sort of got me there quicker. than me sort of having to figure it out and making mistakes on my own, or looking sideways and seeing what my colleagues are doing, and where I should be at. So I think it's hard to find an alternative to practical experience. That's what I feel. But again, that's just my personal experience and my views. I'm sure other people have done really well, straight out of uni. I think Klarna, the guys at Klarna, I think they might even have been dropouts, or it was right after uni. So it's different for everyone, right? But I think for me as an immigrant, minority woman, it really helped me to gain my confidence, self-esteem, professionalism, analytical skills, by being employed by someone else first and learning from my peers, whom I rate very highly.
Yeah, brilliant. So by rotation, a data analytics company, technical tech company. So you're collecting lots of data sort of digitally, but are you collecting any data at the pop-up store?
So we do monitor how many people come in every day, what sort of what they're looking for, or how they got to know from us. So we have specific QR codes within the store to know if the traffic is coming from the store. And I'm actually here every day that we are open, which is a lot of work, but I actually do like to meet people grassroots, to understand, if they've already been on the app, if they've rented before, if they haven't, then what's stopping them. Because we're only 2 years old, so I do feel like, and it helps that I live around the corner. So I love the fact that I'm very close to the source. Community is a really, really big thing for us. So there's a lot of anecdotal sort of stories that we get as well, that we discuss as a team in our team meetings. So yeah, that's the sort of data that we are picking up. We did more, I would say we started doing that even at the Westfield pop-up that we had in summer for 18 days. And this has become, the extension of that, a smaller, cozier version. And we're just sort of refining what exactly the space is meant to be. For example, I know that I spend on average about 25 minutes serving a customer in the store. And if you think about it, that might be okay if someone is buying a £500 dress. But if they're renting a £50 dress, it's not really worth my time. I don't mean that customers are not worth my time. I mean, just in terms of being, thinking about your resources efficiently, it's not a good use of my time. And that's something that we've thought about a lot, which is why this is a common room. It's an event space more so than it is a retail experience. It's not a store, and you don't come here to try 20 things, 30 things, because you're confused about your style. There's no stylist or anything here. You come here because you know what buy rotation is. You've already made some selections on the app. We get them for you. You try them on, and otherwise come for our events and activities.
Brilliant. I actually popped into your store in Westfield over the summer, and that's how I first became aware. I was like,
oh, how cool.
Yeah, and I was just kind of, because I live really near the Westfield store, and I just wandered down. I'm quite often down in Westfield, and I was like, oh, that looks interesting. I was with my daughter, and I went in, and yeah, I mean, it was kind of, and that was sort of when you first came on my radar. So I imagine you're also sort of using it as a bit of a kind of promotional tool as well.
Yeah.
Passing traffic must be like, oh, that's interesting. And pop in.
Yeah. I mean, 100%. Westfield approached us for the opportunity. We're a very small startup. So for us, physical spaces are not a priority. I don't imagine they will be. If they will be, they'll be more like a headquarters for our rotators to come and exchange items with each other and for the team to work at. But I don't, envisage that we'll have like a permanent store forever. This particular opportunity was also offered to us by the estate. We've just built such a valuable community that it's very desirable to have us there. And we're very lucky for that.
Yeah, brilliant. So you're on the shop floor. You're there. I think every day. In fact, I think every day bar probably Monday.
Yes, that's correct.
I think it was your day that you actually have a bit of downtime, or maybe away from the shop floor. But what sort of customer is coming into your store? Could you kind of explain who the buy rotation consumer is?
So the user persona for us is really the working professional female. She is a millennial, although increasingly we have a lot of Gen Z on there. You guys use the app for your Christmas parties, for your balls, your graduation. We've had a lot of people renting for graduation and things like 21st birthdays. But yeah, it's been predominantly the millennial, and I think you'll see that from a lot of our content. We do a lot of user-generated content, which, by the way, besides obviously being very efficient in terms of marketing budget and resources, it's actually just a really, really great way to build community love. You know, people just organically tag us. You know, we don't offer anything for tagging us. You know, we don't give up prizes or whatever. They just love tagging us. They love mentioning us in their Instagram bio. They just really, really want to be a part of this friendly, approachable community. So that's something that we've done as well.
Brilliant. And with the data you're collecting, is that something you're using yourselves, or is it something that you sell on to others? Like what's
No, it's just something that we're using ourselves to improve the recommendations that you'll see on the app. So, you know, if you're looking at, say, a yellow Zimmermann dress, but say it's not available for your date, so there'll be other recommendations for you. It's also, so because it's a social network, there's also a feed page, which we are working on. It's not completely built yet. If anyone's using the app, you'll see that it's kind of not very user-friendly at the moment. But it's because we are sort of gathering the data about what you like, what you're viewing, and then making recommendations based on that. The other thing worth mentioning is I believe we're the only peer-to-peer marketplace, even in the resale side of things, that has an analytics dashboard for individual lenders. So if you're someone who's lending on the app, you'll have this feature called lender activity. And on that, you can see how much money you've made on the app since you started lending out your items. And we're building that out further so that you can see the total value of all your listings, so how much your wardrobe is worth, the amount of money that you've made on it, so the yield, and also what are your top brands, again, top colors, top product categories, because we do know from some of our top lenders who make over $2,000 a month that, you know, they've become much more strategic in the way that they're shopping. So when they do actually shop, and they've, you know, started buying less and less fast fashion. And we know that not just anecdotally, but because we also monitor their resale platform profiles. So things like Depop, Vinted, eBay, Vestiaire. We monitor what they, you know, their public profiles. So we just have a look at what they're doing on there. And it's so interesting that the items that they have on these resale platforms, even Vestiaire Collective, which is more high end, are completely different to the listings on Buy Rotation. And this is why we're just, I would say, you know, there's really a market for what we're doing. It's a very separate market to resell.
Yeah, so you're actually sort of being able to identify what are people wanting to rent. So you're kind of getting to know your customer and the market, which is obviously hugely beneficial to those that are renting and rotating their wardrobes. There's a question here from Zainab Yanisseri. I'm hoping I've pronounced your name correctly. So obviously we've seen a huge amount of information in the press about the growth of fashion rental. So Zainab is just asking, like, where do you see fashion rental and its role in the fashion industry in the next couple of years?
Yeah, I know Zainab. She's written about us in Vogue Turkey, and I think she was at the store a couple of weeks ago to say hi. Hey, Zainab. Yeah, there's a study that was released last week by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. We just contributed to their book as well, Circular Business Models, and a way to make change in the fashion industry. I think it's all going to be launching and being released tomorrow, so keep an eye out. And one of the studies, so we're involved in the study, and we're the only peer-to-peer rental market, fashion rental platform that they've considered, and everything else is Y Closet, Rent the Runway, the Real, Poshmark, all of that stuff. And it was very interesting that they note that by 2030, so in the next 9 years, the rental market is seen to be US 180 billion, and resale, repair, rental altogether is seen to be 700 billion by 2030. I mean, that's a massive opportunity for the fashion industry. Brands, average consumers, we all need to take part in this. So I'm very confident that there's a lot of room for this market to become wider and bigger. I know there's another question here. Is the app only available in the UK? The answer is yes for the moment, although we are expanding to Europe next year. We really position ourselves as the Vinted or Vestia collective of fashion rental. And we're a social network, which again, no other rental platform has really tried to do this. They've never been that considered to do this. It's just sort of, ended up buying or managing stock on behalf of people and brands because it's the easy way out, right? Let's just get a warehouse and put some stuff in there and then end up fulfilling orders ourselves. But yeah, I think that answers the question about Latin American countries.
Yeah,
I mean, yes, sky's the limit. We want to be everywhere. We want to be omnipresent. We want to be the Airbnb of fashion. Our tech is so scalable that we can do over 128 times of transactions that we're doing today. We just have chosen not to expand to other countries because we want to have community managers everywhere. So, it is really about building a culture in every country that we do end up expanding to. And that's why we haven't done it, but we could do it today. We could, we just needed to change the settings on the App Store and Android, and that's about it. But yeah, I think there's a huge potential for fashion rental to continue growing. We're just scratching the surface, even with us being the largest fashion rental player in the UK with over 150k users. We're still only scratching the surface.
Yeah, but you are only 2 years old, so don't be too harsh on yourself. You've done really well in those 2 years.
Oh, thank you, Hannah.
There is a question here from Manny. So what are your thoughts on accessibility in the rental market? And, obviously you've just shared some really big figures there for 2030. Do you think it will ever be able to be used do you think it'll ever sort of be used by the mass market? Do you think it'll ever get so big that actually it will become the mass market, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, the way that we've positioned ourselves, and we say really the bigger goal out there is to beat fast fashion and steal a pie of their, to steal a share of their pie, because they really have, they have all the firepower out there. They're massive companies, they're omnipresent. We could even just take a little bit of that and start eating into that. I think it would be much better for the environment and the climate crisis altogether. So yeah, if you look at as I mentioned, our average order value is about 45 to 50 pounds. This is like buying a Zara dress, which I believe is around the same price, especially during the festive period. Often these dresses are not worn more than 3 times, and then they end up in the landfill. And we know that most of this goes back to Asian and African countries. So if we were just to change a little bit of our habits, we're not even saying that, you have to rent clothes all the time, every time. You can still go to H&M and Zara and whatever, and buy the things that you would love to wear over and over again. But we're just saying, like, everyone needs to start changing their habits little by little. So it's not about naming and shaming people, but we do position ourselves as mass market.
Yeah, and it's about being more mindful, isn't it? It's about actually thinking about, what we have got in our wardrobe before we purchase something. Are we actually going to get good use out of this? Because, there's so many stories, aren't there, across the industry of people buying garments and never wearing them. I mean, I sit on the board of a charity, and we have a high percentage of garments that are donated to the charity that still have their swing ticket on there. So clearly, it's frightening, really. Sabahawal, her pre to this session, actually asked if I could ask you, with a startup, obviously it's quite hard to sort of predict, and you've also had the added complications of COVID and a huge amount of uncertainty, and the uncertainty continues. But how did you go about setting your goals at the initial?
Yeah, I think you have to make a financial projection. I think for me, before I left my job and my career, really, there were already some goals that I had sat down with my husband and myself, and even both our families, to talk about what's the opportunity cost of me leaving this career. What sort of, where could I be financially and mentally, emotionally in 3 to 5 years' time if I continued staying in my career versus doing something new. So from that's where we built out the financial model, so as to say. Obviously that's changed now given COVID, and given now that we've seen well, almost a year worth of what could be like when you have normal operating environments. So that's how I based it off. And I would encourage anyone who's sort of, looking for goals to really quantify them, because this can be a very fluffy industry otherwise. And to be honest with you, because of social media and all these sort of, channels like Instagram, TikTok, whatever, it's very easy to found your own brand. I think the real question is, do you really need to found yet another brand? And if you do, like, sure, it might be your passion or whatever. Is it really going to, be a financial endeavor, or is it just for fun? And if it's for fun, that's fine as well, but just be realistic and honest. But I think it's important to have quantitative goals.
Yeah, and I think, like you say, it is very easy now to set up your own brand. Well, a lot easier than it was. You can set something up and sell it through social channels, but there is a lot of brands out there. So I like your idea of sort of coming up with your ideas, but discussing with those near and dear to you, because actually I think perhaps discussing sort of your ideas can really help you develop and sort of confirm that perhaps what you're endeavoring to do is actually worth its while. Just have a question here in the chat. Are you considering at all partnering up with any other fashion focused startups?
Yeah, I think it really depends in terms of partnerships. We're just very, very mindful of the type of partnerships we do. For us, the focus always has to be on our community at the end of the day. And I'm not big on doing partnerships that don't really have a big commercial value add to buy rotation. I know a lot of people like to announce partnerships, press stories and marketing and whatever. That's not really my vibe, to be honest with you. For me, the focus is really on building buy rotation. So yeah, it would have to depend what you mean by a fashion startup. How does it add value to buy rotation? How can we add value to you and the partner? It can't just be a press story.
Yeah. Thinking again about those values and sort of talking it through and working out. There's a question here from Lena. How do you find the whole legal side of establishing a brand and sort of growing a brand initially, but then also looking to enter new markets and new countries? Is that something that you were knowledgeable about when you first embarked on buy rotation, or have you relied on your freelancers that you employ, or?
Yeah, I mean, I do not know much about the legality of things, to be very honest with you. It's not my background, but I do thankfully have a lot of friends who are lawyers. So they always sort of give me, more, I would say, what's that word?
Advice, guidance?
Yeah, advice and guidance, but it's not to be, followed through. They always advise me to speak to some of their lawyer friends, so like, some colleagues or ex-colleagues. So I'm lucky that I do have a network that can connect me with those people, but I would really advise not to do these things on your own.
Yeah, it's a big piece of work, isn't it?
Yeah, and you're not going to be the expert at everything, so don't think about your time, in a strategic way. Like if you're not going to be the expert, don't submit your IP forms in an incorrect way, because you're going to waste money anyway at the end of the day. Ask for advice, ask for help if you don't understand what you're reading, which I did do, because I didn't quite understand what I was filling up.
Yeah.
And then I asked my friend who's a lawyer.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to what you said earlier, like, select your team carefully. Small team, it's about that family spirit, but also it's about looking at each other's skills and how do those skills complement each other. There might be an area that you're not so knowledgeable about, so therefore rely on someone else's expertise, and that will very much complement and lead to the growth of buy rotation. Okay, so we have another question here. Whether or not you would ever consider adopting sort of buy now, pay later model at all?
No, we in fact got another email from one of the players this morning as well. It's not really, it's the opposite of what we're promoting. we're saying
Yeah.
that you don't need more stuff, which is why even during the pandemic, we did not push anyone to rent clothes. We just said to engage with the community, to use the app, list their items, but it was never to rent items. So it's not the way we want to go. And in fact, if anyone's thinking of using, one of these providers to buy designer clothing just for the sake of renting out, please don't do that. It's against the spirit of what we're doing.
Yeah,
but I'm sure there'll be, yeah, exactly. It's against our values. I'm sure there'll be some people who want to do that arbitrage, but it's not what we will be pushing.
Yeah. And it's also, I mean, just having, investigate a little bit more about yourself and also by rotation, it's very much about moving away from this sort of desire to consume just for the sake of it, and actually be more mindful in your consumption patterns and think a little bit more like, less is more, really.
And what's mine is yours.
There you go. You see. And, I think this has been brought even more to the forefront in recent months with COP26. And, it is frightening the amount of product that is out there and the amount that does ultimately end up in landfill. I think the most recent stats is, as little as only 5% is recycled, and the remainder goes into a landfill. And that often isn't our landfill here in the UK, it's landfills elsewhere in the world, which, is detrimental to the whole, but also, it shouldn't be like that. So I keep thinking we're coming to the end of our questions. Just another one in the chat. Okay, so Yang is just asking a question here. What if a dress that's rented out is broken when it's returned to the renter?
So does that mean you damaged a dress during?
Yes, I think what Yu Jiang is asking is, what happens if you damage a dress when you rent it? What actually is the consequence, or
So we have an invoicing feature within the app. So you get invoiced by the lender for any repairs, damages, even late fees. If you keep a dress longer than you should have, special delivery fees, maybe you needed it for next day and you sent a rental request at 5 p.m. So they can charge you during and after a rental period.
Okay, and actually maybe it might be beneficial, Eshita, if you could just explain your rental model, because there is a question here from Lottie, which is talking about, do by rotation own the product, the stock? So perhaps you could just how by rotation might be useful.
Yeah, so it's really all about peer-to-peer. So that's a two-sided marketplace. So, those analogies of eBay, Vinted, Vestiaire, Depop. So everything belongs to someone on the app. We have over 18,000 listings, which is insane. They're valued at over £7.5 million of clothing and fashion, and it all belongs to people. So it sits in their wardrobe. However, with the pop-up store, we do have pieces from our community. So quite a few people actually who live around the neighborhood asked us if they could leave some of their fancy clothes that they're not going to wear this festive period, but they would love to get rentals for. So if they could leave it in store, people could try them on, and there would be a higher conversion for renting out the pieces directly. So this is not just famous people like influencers, royals, and celebrities, but it's also someone like my ex-colleague who has an amazing wardrobe, but she now has 2 kids and she's not really wearing heels anymore and carrying designer bags for that matter. So it's a mix of people. Some are private, some we are very happy to share the identities of because they're proud to share items. So like someone like Amelia Windsor, who's a royal and a personal friend, she's actually donating all the proceeds of her rental income to Henry Dickens Community Centre, which is essentially, providing, art therapy to the victims of Grenfell Fire. So yeah, so it's a mix of things that we have in here. You've also got a few brands that have listed some of their pieces on the app, and during the time of the pop-up, they put it in store so that people can rent directly.
Just one question, actually, in answer to that, you spoke about conversion rate. Is the conversion rate higher in the pop-up store than on your app?
No, not I wouldn't say necessarily. And this is also why the app is just way better.
Yeah.
Like, the app is fantastic, and if you guys haven't downloaded it already, you have to try it. I mean, the fact that we're 2 years old and we essentially, we've been called the Instagram of fashion rental, and most of the transactions happen peer to peer. They don't happen in store. They don't happen with the wardrobes of these famous people that we're managing on behalf of them. They actually happen between a math teacher who's 49 years old and a trendy, late 20s woman who's a stylist at Harvey Nichols. They happen with these, when I say average, I don't mean that, just average. I mean these regular rotators.
Yeah. So very much built around community and sharing.
Yeah. And I think there's a question about whether I take a percentage. Yeah. And essentially it's a platform. So like Depop and Bestia, we take a platform fee, a service fee for running the platform, for doing our community, for building out our community, for all the events that we're doing. We take a service fee from the lender and the renter.
Yeah, which goes back to the Airbnb comment. You're the Airbnb of fashion.
Exactly.
So Eshita, thank you very much. We did have a question ahead of the session, just asking whether or not there was any opportunity for work experience or internships or within by rotation.
Yeah, definitely. We're always looking out. We're growing very quickly. Sometimes I don't even know that I needed to hire someone yesterday. I probably need to hire someone yesterday, and I realized later that, God, we should have done it. So yeah, we're always on the lookout. If you could email hello@byrotation.com, that's the best way to reach out. The team is overwhelmed when it comes to messaging us on DM or on the app itself.
Yeah.
So, and I think the main thing, which I already mentioned during the call, is we would like to know your username on the app, because it's very important to us that people who join our team at such a young, early, crucial stage are big fans of the community and by rotation altogether. It's not just a job for the sake of wanting a job, and I'll know it right away. So basically, don't just to be very honest, and that's probably like the banker and me coming out. Only apply if you really, really believe in it and are passionate about it, because it's not going to be a glamorous job. It looks very fun on Instagram and socials. But only apply if you truly, truly mean it and want to be a part of this, because we've got huge major plans, and you'll get to be the part of something that's really the next big thing, that's completely transforming how fashion is consumed.
Eshita, I admire your honesty. I mean, I think the fashion industry is not nearly as glamorous as it's made out to be. But I admire your honesty of really what to expect by working for by rotation. Just looks like there's one final question. You mentioned at kind of sort of partway through the talk, when I asked who your target customer was, you said millennials. There's a question here about how are you actually proposing to attract that slightly younger customer, that Generation Z consumer?
Yeah, I think we do it just via marketing, to be honest with you. So a lot of our campaigns, even my team, majority of my team now is Gen Z. Very proud of that. I do think that they're, the generations that are really going to understand what we are doing as our proposition. They are also the ones that are going to be with us when the platform matures. We're only 2 years old now. Think about us, 5 years into our journey. Think about Depop when it was 5 years or 6 years old. It's now 10 years and sold to Etsy. It was very different, right? So Gen Z is an increasingly important audience to us. And all our marketing is becoming more and more tailored towards them, essentially.
Yeah, and also that Generation Z customer is growing up, so it's perhaps finding a need to, perhaps suddenly being invited to weddings, and
exactly
there's a need for that dress, or
they're also more exactly, and they're also more social. They like to tell their peers. They're all sort of micro influencers in their own right. They're actually proud to tell their friends, oh, I bought this, I bagged this in a sale, I rented it. It's so clever. Whereas I think, especially the older millennials, they're less bothered about social media and tagging brands or talking about them or giving their doing a review about, oh, I love this platform, I love it for these reasons. It's so interesting because we're quite active on TikTok, even though the focus seems to be on Instagram, but we are very active on TikTok, and we actually have gotten so many TikTok video reviews without asking for them, and that's ended up in like amazing downloads on the day. So yeah, it's really interesting that the Gen Z love to do reviews. They love to create content without us even asking for it.
Yeah.
And content is king.
Yeah, you might find that just by nature, Generation Z, you reach out to them just through, the general sort of sharing across TikTok. Okay. This will be our last question, because I know you're on the shop floor at the moment, and you've very kindly given up your time. So Sivkan Singh Puri is asking, why is all the functionality to do with the exploring products only available on your app and not on your website? I know you said that you were soon to launch a webpage, I think this month, or was it January? I can't remember, but
it's definitely a choice of design. We are very app first. We always have been. It's 2 years in, and we still don't have a web-based platform. That's by choice, because apps are much more sticky. That's why Net-a-Porter, ASOS, all these range of brands, they're making you download their app and giving you an extra 10% off. Because when you're on the app, you're in my ecosystem, and I can send you push notifications as regularly as I want, along with my email marketing, along with obviously all the social media we do anyway. And I'm also in your phone and in your pocket. So when you're rotating, or when you're bored of Instagram, like, that Monday a few weeks ago when social media was down, we sent out a push notification. Are all your socials down? Us too. Why don't you rotate on the app instead? We are a social network, as I mentioned. So for us, it's a lot about engagement and then converting you to do your first rental with us. And I think this is how we very quickly, in a very short amount of time, with way fewer resources, with me still having the highest equity out of any other fashion rental founding team, became the largest and fastest fashion rental platform in the UK and Europe.
Yeah, brilliant. And here's to a fantastic. So thank you very much, Eshita. I really, really appreciate your time today. Thank you for sharing your insights into the future of rental and sharing, but also to give us a little bit of to buy rotation, but also give us insights into the data you're collecting and how that's being used. I know you've got the pop-up down in Marylebone. It is a pop-up, so how much longer will you be at the pop-up, or will Buy Rotation be actually down at Marylebone?
So definitely until the end of the year, maybe a bit longer. We'll see how it goes. It is a lot of work having a physical space. It's a lot of work, especially if you're working exhausting.
There.
Yes, I mean,
exhausting.
Yeah, I mean, I forgot to mention, besides being an intern, I'm also the shop girl. I work here on the weekends. So yeah, it's a lot of things I haven't done in my life before that I'm learning. It's still a big learning curve and journey for me. I'm not the best at everything, but I'm learning.
Yeah, you're learning what you're good at and maybe, what you're not. So there's opportunity there to pop down to the store and meet with the team, and also just learn a little bit more about what Buy Rotation are doing. Please do download the app, as suggested by Eshita. And Eshita, just you have you've contributed to a book. Could you just remind us of the title? Because you said that was soon to be published.
Yeah, so it's the Ellen MacArthur book. It's on circular business models, and that will be out tomorrow. And I think it has over 80 other fashion companies like, Burberry, H&M, Buy Rotation, Vestiaire Collective that have contributed. So it's just a very interesting read, and many different business models are referred to besides just our own. So definitely worth looking at if you're someone who cares about circular models.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay. Well, look, thank you very, very much. And have a lovely Christmas, not far, 1st of December. So I think I'll probably say that. Thank you very much for joining us today and giving up your time. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much again. Really appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.